And we're recording. Perfect. And I'm very delighted to welcome everyone to our very first event of Trinity Term here in Oxford, and to our very first panel event in our history. And we couldn't be discussing a more timely issue with all the events that are going on right now. And are more than excited to have a very great panel discussion on the environment, green transition, and energy in Southeast Europe with some very great speakers. And as I said, it's a very timely issue given the recent developments in gas supply from Russia. We've had announcements about gas being cut off to Poland and also Bulgaria, which is in our region. And it's going to be very interesting to see how this develops further. As such, having a perspective from the region is going to be even more interesting. Tonight, we're joined by some of the region's foremost researchers and experts on the issue. We have Anna Stoliowska. She is a research fellow at the Center for Social Sciences in Budapest, and she has conducted extensive research on the issues of energy poverty in the region and also the green transition. We also have Dejan Lekić. He is an advisor at the Serbian Environmental Protection Agency, and he has had over 25 years of practice in creating and developing environmental, meteorological, hydrological information systems, and has worked extensively with organizations such as the European Union Environmental Protection Agency and the National Focal Point for Cooperation. And we also have Sonja Ristiska. She is project manager for Southeast Europe at Agora Energiewende, a German think tank. And she's working on Southeast European energy transition and energy policy more in general. And she's also looking at lessons from the German Energiewende, which is also a very topical issue in Germany right now, for Southeastern Europe and beyond. And before we start, just some quick points regarding the format. So my friend, my colleague Lily is going to be moderating the discussion tonight. She has some very great questions lined up. And she's going to be asking us questions for around 15 to 30 minutes, and whoever chimes in, whoever answers, can answer. And the second part of the event is going to be composed of a Q&A session open to the general audience. So if you have any questions in the audience, just feel free to either raise your hand at the end when we finish the first section, or just post your questions into the chat box here on Zoom. And we'll be going through those questions later. And just right before we start, two things. I would like to thank Tanya Lekić for organizing this event and for contacting our speakers. Some really great effort here. Lily for coming up with some really great questions, and Irina for managing our social media. And yeah, without further ado, we are now going to start. Lily, you have the floor.
Hello, everyone. I'm very excited to be moderating today's event. As Dave has introduced, we have some of the most foremost scholars and thinkers on energy transition and the green transition more generally for Southeastern Europe coming to speak to us today. I think I'm just going to kick off with questions because there's a lot of them and I'm conscious of time. So probably the most pressing one at the moment, the one that's been on the forefront of people's minds recently, ever since February, is the war in Ukraine. The question we have set is that Russia's invasion of Ukraine has put European energy and climate security through its biggest crisis, and the trilemma of affordability, reliability, and sustainability is more salient now than ever before. It has clearly demonstrated the need for renewed impetus to see progress on the green transition. So my question is, after all that preamble, what have been the implications of the green transition in the Western Balkans in light of Ukraine? If anyone wants to take the floor.
Well, okay, then I can go first. Hi, yeah. Thanks again for the invite to join the discussion today. It's of course a very important topic that it's sort of, we plunged the entire continent, right, in this whole energy crisis. And even though it's springtime, we now need to find solutions because winter will be soon here again. What are the implications? I would say the implications are, of course, not small, even though the region is, of course, not neighboring Ukraine, but still, the region is quite exposed to the European markets, to the prices. It imports a lot of its fossil fuels. It imports imports the entire gas that it consumes. It imports, of course, oil. And mainly, of course, coal is domestic production. So at least at that part, like the countries are not reliant on Russian coal. And basically the skyrocketing prices have had quite a negative impact on consumption. Some of the countries have introduced price regulations, like in North Macedonia, where the government sort of froze prices on specific products. I think they're still frozen. There is, of course, subsidized electricity consumption. There are still, I would say, there are a lot of concerns also about security of supply, because all of the countries, apart from Bosnia and Herzegovina, are actually importers of electricity as well, apart from oil and gas, which, of course, concerns them then about the fact that not only households, but actually industry is also quite suffering, as well as SMEs, because the prices are too high, because these are countries which are still developing, which means that the shock is too great. There will be protests in Albania because of this. And we see a lot of backtracking, even the small, I would say, a movement towards decarbonization or a coal phase out. We see now that this is not happening anymore. Like North Macedonia announced that it will prolong its coal phase out. So it still want to use as much as possible of its coal capacities because of the expensive prices on the market. And Bosnia and Herzegovina is like one of the main exporters of electricity, for instance, in the region. Citing security of supply concerns, actually backtracked on its obligation to shut down 2 units, which were opted out of the large combustion directive, and citing that they need them in operation because they need the cheap electricity for their households, because if they rely on imports, for instance, they will need to raise the price, and then they will have, social issues, basically. So even in countries which maybe would not have suffered so much because they're not so much reliant, let's say, on imports, we see this argument of the war, of the crisis, of the rising prices being used as sort of an excuse to continue using fossil fuels as long as possible. What we don't see is a lot of conversation, a lot of talk about what can be the midterm to long-term measures. So demand reduction, energy efficiency measures, assisting vulnerable consumers in improving, having alternatives to what they use, etc. This is something that there is absolutely no discussion whatsoever, at least within the political elites, in national debates. Maybe in some specific circles there is, but you don't really see the governments thinking that this crisis is actually an opportunity as well to really sort of have a wave of improving consumption, meaning that you lower the demand, you improve energy efficiency, so people actually use less, they use more clean fuels, etc. So the only way how they know how to control the whole thing is basically through subsidizing prices, which of course is necessary. It's not that it's not, but this cannot be the only instrument. This is a short term. And what concerns me is that the long-term thinking is again missing in this context. And it's only like, okay, what we do, what can we do now? But not really strategically thinking, how can we be less dependent, not only on Russian imports, to be honest, but we see how being so much dependent on one source for gas, for oil, for whatever, can cause a lot of issues then. But this is absolutely not there in the making of the policies, I would say. So yeah, that's it. Thanks.
Yes, please go ahead.
Yes. Hello, everybody. Thank you, Lily. Thank you, Tanya. Thank you, David, for the invitation and the introduction. I would be like quite negative today because that's my, I'm too old to be positive. But in a way, we have to be realistic, because the region, the Western Balkan region, before the war in Ukraine was already slowing down a lot in the sense of EU integration. And the only driver for the Western Balkan in the environmental protection field, even the energy transition, is actually the EU accession process. If we don't have EU accession process, nobody will do anything. We will just sit and wait while the investors are coming from abroad and investing in whatever kind of technology. So the implication of the war in Europe is tremendous, meaning that something that was already slow is not slowing down, is getting into the stall position, like the airplane which cannot fly anymore. So I'm afraid that we are going to fall, simply because the reports on the state of the environment in Serbia, they are not changing for 15 years now. Everything is the same. Yeah? And we have, every single year, we have the same great high-level political statements from the European Commission in their progress report. It is the same for all the Western Balkan countries. And the changes that are resulting from those statements and the suggestions and recommendations are not happening. The changes are very small, and I mean, every single year we receive the report from the European Environment Agency saying that 10 power plants on coal in the Western Balkan region are polluting half of the Europe, and several dozens of thousands of people are dying around earlier than expected in Europe and in the Western Balkan region. And what's happened? Nothing. I mean, and then we had the war in Ukraine, and the whole story about replacing coal power plants with gas and heating, also with gas heating, drops down. And now even the most intelligent among us are having a problem explaining to people what are we going to do now. So we quickly have to think about this and rethink the whole strategy and see what, I mean, we have to jump over the next step. We have to make the second step immediately, not the first one that came to our head. And is it solar? Is it I don't know, wind, whatever. I read recently that in Denmark, in one day they managed to cover the whole consumption by wind energy. I'm not sure if I understood that well. But then some people told me, of course, they have a contract with France, because France can level down the production with their nuclear energy reactors. Whatever the impact of the Ukraine war and the war in Europe in general, even more than the green transition, is impacting one very important thing: life. The price of life goes down, and when you are having a very low price of life, then the green transition is not so important as before, when it was not so important. Thank you.
If I may jump in, so thank you again for the invitation, and nice to hear Sonia and Dejan kicking off the topic. So I've been following, just to kind of go 2 years now. Before, I was like following how the COVID crisis has been impacting energy affordability in the region, but also like broader in Europe. And I would say the war now, it's the kind of at the tip of the iceberg so far, and leading to more, I mean, even higher prices. And we know that energy prices is one of the main drivers of energy poverty, fuel poverty, inability to satisfy the domestic energy needs. And this is directly affecting not just, it has actually two effects. One is making those that are vulnerable and more vulnerable and more difficult to get out of the situation, but also it puts additional layer of citizens into this pit hole. I was just kind of reviewing what are the 2019 was the latest like shares of one of the important indicators of energy poverty in the region, inability to hit the dwelling. So in the region is between around 10% in Serbia up to 40% in Kosovo, and this is 2019. So basically we can kind of definitely our estimation that this will go up. And I think also some of you mentioned this before, what I actually am very interested in is how, so now going back to the kind of at the micro level, the household level, what citizens do in this situation, like in COVID times, now in time when electricity prices, gas prices, maybe even depends from country, maybe more general electricity prices more relevant for all countries. That definitely develop such an unhealthy coping strategies to deal with this lack of ability to cover financially all their basic needs in terms of like decision between eating and heating. And it's things like I would reduce the quality and quantity of food, or things like going in the theater, going in the cinema, something totally a luxury for many. And one of the I think Dan mentioned this. One of the issues is also that this increased reliance and dependence on fuel wood, and it's not the fuel. It's not a fancy biomass renewable type of source. It's just this chopped wood, and often is not of a good quality, and mostly is used in a very inefficient stoves, which causes also lots of indoor but also outdoor pollution. And this also happens in cities, especially like Skopje and kind of also across the region, that the pollution is very high. And I was also looking that definitely during the crisis, the use of fuel wood has increased. And this is what is very interesting for me, that this has not just this health implication, but this has also societal implications, in a sense that people are so stressed out by the crisis, and that they feel that they even before feel like that there is no one to help them. So there is no broad systematic solutions, either social welfare or any measures. So there's like no one to rely on in time of crisis other than themselves and their inner social circle. And basically they don't even consider that there might be some measure there or some institutions there that they could kind of rely on. So it's quite even psychological in a way, that there is increasing shift between what institutions can do for them, what are and actually what citizens do on their own, which is very kind of a detrimental to their health. And actually there is even a case, and I came across a web page about in North Macedonia about, and this is actually done by volunteers. So they worked with, this is a natural person, so he's not representing any institution, so anything, just out of charity, works with homeless and people in a very deprived people, and set up a website that if you want to pay the electricity bill, you can. And I was like so impressed by there was descriptions of the families you can kind of choose from, or some was more, and I kind of analyzed like 100 of them during the crisis. It was so interesting for me. And like I saw that is definitely this because of lack of solutions, like people really kind of go out to strangers, and that there's this increases this divide between institutional solutions and measures to deal with energy poverty within this context of energy transition.
I just want to say thank you all for kicking off this talk so well. I'm going to move on to the next question because I'm very conscious about the time already. What I will like to ask is, if you guys, I think we've sent the agenda to everyone, if there's any questions in particular that you want to address, because of how limited for time we are, please let me know and we'll make sure to get onto those ones. So the next one, we've already kind of touched on it quite a bit, so maybe I'll rephrase it. is what is the level of climate commitment among decision makers in the Western Balkans? And to rephrase it, I'll probably say, where's it coming from? What's the source of that? Thank you.
Well, I mean, they are supposed to follow the EU agenda, right? As wanting to join the EU one day, and all of them in different sort of lanes of progress in this session process, even though, yes, it's absolutely not where it's supposed to be or where everybody thought it would be a few years ago. So they sort of have the same pledges to be decarbonized by 2050. They signed the decarbonization agenda last year in the Energy Community Ministerial Summit, where, yeah, they did. I mean, the obligation is that they will be net neutral by 2050, that they will introduce carbon pricing, those targets and all the things like the EU. But it is a process which is mostly top down, and is a process that is mainly sort of because they want to join the EU, and this is something as an obligation. So it's not something that comes from the countries themselves, where they see this as an opportunity to develop their economies, to do the entire coal to clean transition, to have green jobs, to invest in energy efficiency, to boost renewables development, etc. So there have been some interesting happenings. For instance, Serbia is an interesting case, although it doesn't have any, for instance, coal phase out date. It's still quite reliant on its coal proudly as well, etc. It had at least quite big of a boom in the renewables market, because they introduced a new law which was very sort of progressive, and as one of the largest markets in the region, which was still quite untapped for a long time, there was such a market pressure from so many players from different countries in the renewable sector that we saw for like 1 year 700 megawatts of wind, for instance, in the pipeline, which of course, I mean, now there is a backlash from the utilities that, you know, they cannot take, I mean, the grid cannot take this, etc., which is normal, like for these countries, that you see some sort of backlash like that. But in general, these developments have been happening because the EU is there and they want to join the EU, so they have to sort of introduce it. It's still not a process where we see the decarbonization of the countries, I would say, because it's in their interest, it is the economic, social, environmental interest. Although I would say the only maybe positive thing from all this has been a lot of environmental movements against harmful projects. Which is, I would say, of course, connected to the fact that these organizations and the local communities want to be part of the, you know, big European family. But it's not that; it's that people just don't want to live in polluted areas anymore, and they don't want their rivers destroyed anymore. And so these sort of grassroots movements are there. And against harmful projects, but if we come to the point of decision making, it's mainly, okay, we have to do it because they tell us to. It's not because it's good for the citizens.
Yes,
yes, I agree with Sonia. She's completely right. The problem is that 90% of what you are hearing from decision makers is acting, pure acting. I have heard maybe 2009 by a high-level EU positioned decision maker back in Lisbon at one conference about the path that Western Balkan countries has to pass comparing to Bulgaria and Romania. And he told, so 13 years ago, he told us, you cannot just talk the talk, you have to walk the walk. And now what happened during these 13 years? Now we really know how to act. You know, we know all the key words. We are going to repeat 500 times green transition. We are going to repeat gap bridging. We are going to streamline and pipeline and whatever. And we are not going to do anything. And I'm going to prove that. PM10 is measured at 38 locations in Serbia, automatic stations operated by the government. And you know that EU law, as a matter of fact, the national laws in all the countries of the Western Balkan prescribe 35 days per year with exceedances of PM10, okay? So 35 per one, the whole year. 365 days. And imagine now we are ending the 4th month of 2022. So of these 38 stations measuring PM10, 18 of them, 1/8, are having more than 35 days during the first 4 months of this year. And the maximum is city of Valjevo. You cannot believe this, with 91 days of PM10 exceedances. This is the year 2022. So what the hell are doing the decision makers? What kind of green transition is that? We have 91 days during the first 4 months in a city of 100,000 citizens who are actually going to die of this. And we are still speaking about top-level politics, some kind of very, very, I like this stuff. I like to speak about that. But this is not reality here. People are burning tires. People are burning used motor oil. These are the things that are happening here. And no matter how much money enters into these countries, I mean, people, Sonia said, people are fighting to protect their rivers. Just check this. In Serbia, people are fighting to protect the rivers in the protected areas. So, I mean, why the hell these areas are protected except to protect the rivers as well? Meaning that we are in some kind of like a horror movie. So we are reinventing things, and instead of simply following what is the name of the thing, protected area, who the hell can think about building a small hydropower plant and dozens of small hydropower plants in the protected areas? So we are discussing about the basic stuff. 1 + 1 is how much? So we have to rediscuss this, but at the same time, you will have top-level decision makers saying, yes, we are completely committed. We are absolutely committed. We are looking forward to get European funds to implement green agenda and green transitions, which is, I'm afraid that I have to say that, and I'm sorry that I have to say that. It is complete fake. Thank you.
I agree with what Sonia and Dejan said, and just to add that about this kind of a lack of, I would not say it's only lack of political will or kind of ticking the box political will. I think it really comes down to the lack of capacities to implement what if promised. For example, and this like human capacity in the sense of first is this what Sonia mentioned, the top down. It's like everything has to go through the ministry, and actually I've experienced this while doing interviews. It's like if the minister doesn't sign that this public servant can give me an interview, that it won't happen, or like they would just send a written response. So it's like everything is totally controlled. So basically, even if there's a capable public servant, won't be able to do or won't be able to do the work. And it's also this, I think that this EU process is quite tricky in the sense that I'm aware that sometimes European, like the energy community helps draft the laws. And basically, so there is like someone else, external expertise or funds or experts, anyone outside of the ministries making these laws. So basically, oh great, like you've put everything on paper, everything looks great, but then there's like someone that needs to implement that. There is need of definitely financial and human capacities. And on the other hand, I've seen also a good example of how even one person, I'm just thinking of I remember of one person Sonia knows about, public servant in a municipality in Skopje. So thanks to Ljupčo, he is only one person, one municipality. He managed to do so many things. So first, before at the national level, the regulation was adopted that all new buildings have to be energy efficient, at least category C. He did that at the level of kind of a local level, just because he was willing and capable. And so it's really sad that sometimes I see like, oh, even some countries have phrased like, this looks great, no paper, but it really comes down to who is going to implement it, how is going to implement it, and not. And just to mention briefly what Dejan said about like people burning tires and garbage. I think it's definitely very dangerous, and we need to take this very seriously. But on the other hand, there is a bit of a stigmatization, like, oh, like these are the whatever they're doing. We shouldn't be the approach, because these people are not doing because they want to. It's because they don't have any other options, and sometimes it's like not just life or death, but it is really about kind of this survival. And yes, so I'll wrap up here for now.
Thank you very much. It was really insightful. I think that brings us quite neatly actually onto just transition topic. We've sort of talked about what the major challenges are to a green transition in the Western Balkans in terms of a just transition. But I'm wondering if you can maybe expand on that. I'm trying to cram the questions all together for the sake of time, without trying to shorten anything. We know energy poverty is a massive challenge throughout the Western Balkans. So what's being done to address this? Are there the opportunities for new job creation under a green transition? And can it address other pre-existing geographical and economic inequalities? Dejan, do you want to go first?
Yeah, why not? Sorry, Sonia. Now I see that you raised your hand. The thing is that whenever you are speaking about the environment, and that is something that we have learned from the Western countries, you have to have enthusiasm. You have to be positive. You have to increase the level of participation of all the citizens. Everybody is breathing the air. Everybody is creating a garbage. Everybody has to heat. So we have to get somehow all together. Unfortunately, due to the things that we have heard from Sonia and Anna as well, the enthusiasm nowadays towards EU integration, not only that, but towards environmental issues after the COVID pandemic and during the Ukraine war, the level of enthusiasm falls very, very, very low. And even worse, the trust between the citizens and the government is even lower. So people simply think that every single person who become a minister or somebody, he is there just to get rich or to have some corruptive business or whatever. That's the general opinion in the Balkans. There is no doubt about that. In every single country, I was in Skopje 2 months ago, and I spoke with a lot of people. I have very much a lot of contacts all around the place. So that is the point of view. People are thinking, those who want to be, let's call them politicians or decision makers, they just want to get corrupted as soon as possible and to get rich. That is the basic point of view. So we have a population which is using disastrous things for heating. Of course, I agree with Anna. They are not doing that because they like to do that. They don't have any other choice. At the same time, that population, poor population, people who are not capable of finding a solution for their daily life, not only for heating, they don't believe to anybody anymore. They don't believe to the politicians. I mean, what does it mean? EU directive. EU directive does not mean anything for them. But what does it mean? EU directive not implemented at all. It means even less. So if you make some rules, then you will not. If you apply some rules, then you will not come into a situation like in city of Bor in Serbia. You have, since the beginning of the year, the concentration of SO2 is exceeded 47 times, and it is allowed 20 times per year. So and when if you go there and ask these people, but how you are, I mean, why you are supporting this? They are saying, but they are giving us the salary. Why? What should we do? So it is a blackmail. It is a complete system of blackmail where you are giving a salary to the people that you are poisoning at the same time. And I don't see the way except to simply get the European standards. We don't have to get into EU. I was speaking about this for years in the European agency, but we have to apply standards immediately, all the standards. So if some factory has to be closed, let it be closed. If somebody is breaking a rule, like if I drive through downtown Belgrade 120 kilometers per hour, police will stop me. So if that is a rule for me, then let's see all the rules in sense of the environmental protection applied for everybody. And that will bring the just that Lily you have mentioned. That will bring people together. People will see the rules are the same for everybody. So now we are at the ground zero, and let's start building something. If the rules are not the same, then you cannot create the synergy, and you cannot create this enthusiasm to start again. Thank you.
Thank you. I think, Sonia, you have something you wanted to say.
Yeah, just to add that, I mean, when it comes to just transition in general, and we're discussing the energy transition, it's of course tightly connected to switching from the dirty lignite that most of them are using towards more clean fuels, which means that you also need to sort of rediscover how to what is the new socioeconomic development that you want to have in these regions, especially, I mean, also national level, I would say, but specifically these regions which are so tightly connected to the coal industry. I mean, only one country has sort of started this process, that's Macedonia, and they are currently developing the entire I would say planning about the coal phase out, including the just transition and what kind of new jobs they can open, etc. The other countries are not discussing yet coal phase out or just transition, although they are part of one platform which is connected to the European coal regions in transition platform. But I would say the main problem with the just transition, if we are talking, and because we are talking so much about what the countries are doing, how is this connected to the EU level, what is replacing this entire sort of narrative of decarbonization, is that it's a bit sort of like pick and choose of how things are done, and there isn't really a strategy of how this should be done. And the missing point is that there is also no funding. I mean, this is also a bit of a criticism, not only criticize the region, but criticize the EU as well, is that you cannot do a just transition without funding. I mean, this is just not, it cannot work because it requires so much support to do the restructuring of the industry and the regions themselves that it's, and especially for countries which like these, it's impossible for them to do it by themselves. So we cannot really talk about just transition if we don't talk about funding and money. And I think that in many of the cases when we discuss these things, it's usually what needs to be done, how it can be done, how they need to like announce a coal phase out, to do all these plans. But you can have perfect plans, and then when it comes to implementation, you usually encounter a lot of issues, and a lot of them is because especially these municipalities in these regions are so impoverished, or it's just that the only funding that they get is about the functioning of the municipality itself, that they can never do any sort of grand projects about restructuring, about the startups, offering the youth new jobs, etc. So there is really this missing link between, I would say, what is on EU level, what is the assistance that this country get, what are their plans and strategy, and with them what is happening on local level. And without that being improved, it would be really difficult to do a proper just transition, because it's such, in many cases, it's such a big issue, but it's also so much localized issue, and it's so different from region to region, and how people perceive this, and what is their age, and how can you like retain the young people there. So it takes so much work as well from everybody really, but mostly it is the locals that you need to engage in these processes, otherwise it will be very difficult. So yeah, I would say that there is absolutely, I mean, one of the hardest things to do will be absolutely this in the Western Balkans in the upcoming year.
If I may add, thank you. So basically, I was kind of I was thinking about the questions of the green transition, right? There is a, I mean, language makes a lot of difference. Like there's a transition, it was energy transition, green transition, just transition, right? And then it's, I have the impression that this is interpreted differently. Of course, the core of it is, well, it first actually started back to get away from Russian gas, right, with the energy union. Then it was also including the climate emergency and everything. So it's, we know what it is, the replacing coal and oil, and also gas in the long term. But with all these different adjectives, it's also, there's a different meanings. And it's because I agree with what Sonia Dejan said, is very complex. It's very, you can like look at the process from different angles and from different actors. And I would like to kind of use socially just, even socially just and democratic energy transition, just to kind of incorporate the aspect that it's not just that we have to be careful that some people will lose jobs and we need to retrain them and so on, but it's also about including the energy vulnerable, and even like not just energy vulnerable, but there is a new trend in my area of kind of energy poverty, human geography, that it's also, why should we see consumers as consumers? Why can we see them as energy citizens? Because they have multiple capacities. They're not just there to pay the bills. And they should have a say in how things are happening, not just local and the national level. One example, what was happening very early in the energy transition were the feed-in tariffs that were there to help increase the share of renewables. That was like the first type of measures. And what actually these measures did were that they were funded through electricity bills, which is paid by everyone. So it's a very unjust process. So the goal is to increase the share of renewables, right? We want to kind of achieve something. And we fund a few companies, we give them a guaranteed price, funding and so on. So just a few of them. So that basically this is funded by everyone, including energy vulnerable. So it's a quite unjust. It's a green transition, but I would say it's unjust. And it's definitely, I mean, in also this Green Deal, like I really like how EU, I have to say, I've been very critical of how EU was handling the energy transition, but I really like the effort into recently, especially recently the past 2 years with the Green Deal, and also not just the Green Deal, but corresponding funding, that there is this notion of citizens and kind of to incorporate local, I guess, we'll have to see the results from all of these in the coming years. But I like that it's kind of trying to learn from its mistakes. And I think that what is important to say about the region, that this energy transition cannot be just copy-pasted into the region. It's not, so we have a different history, post-socialistic and mostly, and it's something that it's still kind of, we're still not there. We still don't have good social welfare systems. And if you just, I really don't like how it's misused, this narrative, energy is not, it's a commodity, you have to be able to pay it, there is no protection. We were doing a study now, UK and France were like pioneers in, UK no more, pioneers in liberalization. There is still a protection, social tariffs and so on, caps and different kind of apply. So it's not just something that you kind of, EU does it, yes, but then look at the history and the dependencies and so on. You cannot just, and what I actually wanted to also say, that for me this democratic also means that we have to acknowledge how people react to things. Like, right, there were like these different movements that were mentioned, and they were even like even beyond the region, like different in Europe, different kind of movements, people going out on the streets because of increase of prices. And this is kind of a to some extent also reaction of the transition indirectly. And we have to kind of take into account, because it's like they went on the street because there was no other process in which they could have been involved, or like kind of were not being heard. And also, last but not least, is like this democratic, and also kind of for me means this good governance, kind of improving the good governance of institutions, in a sense that, for example, seeing that maybe right to energy is not a human right, but actually is is related to other basic rights. And then like there is even like a strong lobby coming from NGOs that we should ban these connections of, well, some radicals said ban these connections of everyone, but also definitely what has happened, for example, in Barcelona, is that there is ban of these connections of socially vulnerable categories. So you just cannot be disconnected because you have to be protected.
Thank you very much. It was really interesting to hear the discussions on just transition for the region. Again, we should have maybe made this panel like 2 hours long, David. I could keep talking about this forever and ever, but I won't keep everyone. So if we could really quickly sum up maybe some positive like visions for success, for opportunity for a green transition in the Western Balkans. Specifically, I wrote about North Macedonia as a regional leader, what makes it distinctive, what can other countries in the Western Balkans take from it, can they? But if there's anything else you want to talk about, it would be really interesting. Thank you. Does anyone want to go first? Or are we all doom and gloom about climate change?
Okay, I mean, the question of climate change. I mean, I really like one of your questions. I think it was about. I mean, okay, of course, when you're coming from the country, you're never thinking it's a leader. So I wouldn't call it like the leader. It's just that Macedonia is, unlike the rest of them, I would say the one which is the poorest with national resources. So it was one of the reasons, maybe the positive thing there, like the silver lining, was because we're so poor with coal and water as well, that and so reliant on imports that there was the previous government sort of realized, okay, maybe it will be beneficial if we open up towards renewables because there is no other way. But that's maybe not, I don't know what the other countries can learn from that specifically. But I think that they're facing their own problems now with the expensive imports. I mean, Serbia as well had issues with their own power plants, and they also did not have enough lignite. They had they also had to like import quite expensive electricity. And I think I read somewhere that they paid 500 million euros just for imports last winter. And imagine if this money was actually used for the energy transition of the country, actually boosting the renewables instead of just paying for importing electricity because nothing was done for so long. But I really like the question about basically is the entire decarbonization connected at all with the material issues or not, because in many of the cases the discussion is no, we cannot really work on the climate change, and we cannot work on these reforms because we still need to take care of people need to eat, people need cheap fuels because everybody is so poor, etc. But I think it is a false dichotomy, to be honest, because how can we think that climate change and what has been happening in this region is actually a non-material issue? It is connected to that. It's connected to how the first transition has been done in the 90s, how bad it was done. It is connected to how we see state capture by oligarchs in the energy sector. We see how political economy works. We've seen how basically big businesses or big money has been detrimental towards the environment. So I don't think that these issues are not connected. And I do think that proper energy transition and dealing with climate related threats actually should improve the material situation of the people. It should not be the other way around. But I'm afraid that this is usually also used by those same people which are destroying the environment or making money out of energy is basically they are using the same argument that no, we cannot do this because this is what the rich countries are doing. I mean, me working in Germany, I've heard that argument so much, which is, of course, it's true, but it's also something that they use to just not do anything. And basically, but of course, I mean, German citizens are rich, they can pay for that. Our citizens are not rich, they cannot pay for that. And this is usually with this, you know, like, then the argument stops, because what else can you say after that, right? So I would say that I think it's really important for everybody who works on these topics to have that in mind, that by improving the social standing of the population, we also we are not only improving their income level or their power, their purchasing power, but we need to also improve the environment in which they live, the air that they breathe, the water that they drink, the electricity that they use, that it's coming from clean resources, and we shouldn't be thinking that these things are completely detached one from another. Thanks. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy and grateful that you picked up on that question, because that's actually my research topic. And I was trying to be polite and cut out my own selfish interest, but no, thank you. That was really interesting. Dejan, do you want to talk?
Yes, you said that we should be at least a bit optimistic. So we have to reintroduce the issue of responsibility, and we have to reintroduce the concept of measurement of the phenomena, environmental phenomena in general. Meaning that in the field of the environment, comparing, for example, to the meteorology. Meteorology is measuring temperatures, rainfall, this kind of stuff, wind, and except in cases of extreme events, you are not doing anything. You're just saying to people, okay, there will be a sunny day today. If it is the temperature is too high, then you're saying, be careful, the temperature is too high, don't stay too long outside or something, you know. But in the field of the environment, there has to be immediate reaction. And there is something called DPCIR concept, where you have driving forces, you have pressures on the environment, you have impacts, but then you have the reactions of the decision makers. In the Balkan region, the decisions of decision makers is not made according to the measurements. It is made under the pressure of the international community. Nobody cares if we are saying the things that I just said to you. I mean, the levels of PM10 and PM 2.5. Nobody really, the decision makers are trying to play down the whole topic. So what does it mean? It means that we have to educate people. We have to introduce the responsibility as a concept. You have to show results. Imagine your kid going to school and every single time bringing back the negative grades. And what are you going to do? You are going to say, what's wrong? Are you stupid or what? Or there is something wrong in the school. But if from all subjects your kid has a low grades, then there is a problem with your education. Somebody has to be responsible for something. We are all the time we are saying we are going to do the things in the field of the environment by our own way. We have our own way. We are all except Albania, of course, we are all ex-Yugoslav republics. We knew how to do that, but we knew how to do that 35 years ago. We lost that knowledge. We have to learn again how to do it. And the only way how to learn that again is by using facts, and facts are coming from the measurement. We are either having positive results or we are not. I'm afraid that we are not, but it doesn't mean that we don't have to fight to have positive results. And that's the optimistic part. I mean, I know a lot of people in all ex-Yugoslav republics. I know people in Albania as well. I think that still we are not mentioning here depopulation as a problem of the Western Balkans, but still we have enough people with a high level of knowledge in all these fields who are capable of moving the thing, but they're on the wrong positions. They're somewhere hidden. Usually they are working for the international organizations or foreign companies. They don't want to work for the government, or even to get fully involved in the process, because simply that's the rule. I know many young people of your age who are working in the state ministries in Serbia who left. Now they are with the UN, with here and there. They simply don't want to invest themselves because they see there is no responsibility. The people are doing whatever they want. They shave in the morning and then they get an idea of strategic move that particular day, which is a complete. I mean, that is not happening even in sub-Saharan Africa anymore. That you make a decision about. I will give you just one example. In Belgrade, the Belgrade mayor or deputy mayor decided to replace a trolley bus line with electric bus. So can you please, is there anybody in the world who can explain what the hell is green there? Yes, the bus is green. The color of the bus is green. So we have a trolley bus that existed for 70 years, replaced by electrical bus. And that is a pure political marketing. There is no responsibility. We have to impose responsibility as a concept. And with that, I will finish and say the green transition is only possible if there is a responsibility. If we are seeing, if we are moving. If we are just saying, yes, you cannot see that, but I'm running, then it doesn't mean anything. We have to see if we are moving, and we have to prove that. Facts and numbers. Thank you.
I was also having a hard time to think about positive lessons, but I will just kind of mention a few kind of ideas. First, I would say that, I mean, even like we have all these large structural problems, I think that still some small or like kind of grassroots type of activities could make a difference. And there is, I guess, other than human capacities and a bit of a will, and a little bit of adjustment of some measures. So there's been talk of kind of enabling citizens to use photovoltaics. I mean, this is, I think, still not there. So this is one measure how you can really make this at the beginning unjust increase of renewable share just now for that you will enable. Of course, you will have to think, okay, then who is able to fund this to buy probably not the energy vulnerable, but if you add kind of some social criteria to it, you can really make a good, I would say, good progress. Other than this, I actually really am big of fan of the Macedonian ombudsperson. Big fan. I actually by accident ran into the annual reports a few years ago, and now I'm like read all from 2000. I mean, it's such a and actually this is I'm now doing a study of how this is done in also other European countries, including like some from the region, Serbia, Albania. I mean, in what is clear from the region that they are all vocal about the misuse of monopolies, like disconnecting citizens. Macedonia is the case even that citizens who pay the bills are disconnected because they're in regions with high share of unpaid bills, so it's actually for them safe to do this disconnection from outside rather than go there in person and be maybe their personal safety of the people involved there will be in question. This is what they say. I mean, the report is just like, it's like a movie. I'm always like amazed how this comes, and actually if we give the ombudsperson, for example, more power into how they can make their results more shown and more taken seriously into consideration, it won't be just a repetition in the last 20 years. They're saying the same thing. Another thing I wanted to say, it's really about this, about like kind of the small measures. So there was like lots of measures when I was doing my field work for my thesis 2017 in Macedonia, was that there is some kind of a funds, of course, for international donors to invest in energy efficiency, renewables, even for citizens. But they're definitely, so there is no discussion between the technical and the social side. So like you are thinking that people can go in the bank and afford a loan and just like, I just have this, I don't know, 10,000, 20,000 euros. I'm going to fix my home and that's it. It's not going to happen. And so definitely there should be some kind of a criteria or some kind of a measures how you include the both sides, or because otherwise with these measures you're funding the rich. Like if you just put measures for all households, then the rich are, and then you're kind of, oh yes, we're ticking the box, increasing share of renewables, changing windows, but actually you're doing this for the rich. So I think with some small criteria and awareness about at least how some of the most complicated areas are interrelated, that we can achieve some results.
Thank you very much. I'm aware of the time. I wish I could keep you here forever and really unpack some of your answers, but I can't. So thank you so much for being here. I know it's always hard to find positive things to say about climate change. It's a pretty dark topic, unfortunately. But I think it is important to keep an eye out on what are the pathways forwards, where is there some hope, and what can we focus on for the future. So thank you, that was absolutely fascinating, not just for me personally, but I know all our members here have really enjoyed it, and the people that will watch the recording afterwards will find this completely illuminating. So thank you very much for being here, for taking the time out of your day. We're really grateful. David, have you got anything else that you want to add?
I mean, I have to second your point. I would have a gazillion questions on this issue. Really, every single speaker have brought so much new insight into this topic. And for us as students of Central and Eastern Europe, this topic is not covered at all. And I mean, Lily is doing her thesis on the environment, but we don't have any classes, any seminars on that issue. And I think, as all of you mentioned, it involves so many things. It is a very intersectional issue that ties in all sectors of society. And so I'm really, really grateful. And as Lily said, I could also personally keep you for another hour or two. So thank you very, very much for joining us here tonight. And yeah, I think like being conscious of time, we should wrap up for tonight. So once again, thank you to all of our panelists for making time for us tonight. Thank you to all of our guests who came tonight. And just a quick reminder to follow us on social media. We'll be posting that in the chat box. And also a reminder for our next events. We have an event on the outcomes of the Serbian elections, actually, another panel coming up next week, next Thursday at 5 p.m. UK time, 6 p.m. Central European time. So do please tune in. It's going to be very interesting as well. And yeah, I wish everyone a very nice evening, a very nice upcoming May holiday, May 1st, and see everyone soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you once again.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.